Hello everyone, first news update for 14th of May. Now it's about 9 o'clock in the morning Moscow time, and I have prepared quite a number of news on some major developments, and hopefully you will find it informative and useful. And if so, please don't forget to click that like button and leave some commentary. More likes and comments definitely can help with the algorithm, and if you are watching this video on YouTube, it will be even bigger help if you will switch for next 30 to 40 minutes to my Rumble channel, and if you would watch this episode there on Rumble. And also, dear friends, before I start a news update itself, let me make an announcement, which is that because basically almost on daily basis, number of our members of our community, some members are complaining about length of my updates. What I will do from now on, at least for time being, is that once full video is uploaded on YouTube and Rumble, then I will cut this video on the pieces, 2, 3, 4 pieces, maybe 5, and I will publish these short videos. So if one have no time to watch entire video, then maybe these short clips will be more useful in that case, right? More convenient. Let's see if it will work. If not, then I'm not obligating myself to do this constantly, but let's try it. Why not? So that's been said, dear friends, let's go through some news now, and let me present you how we see things and the developments on a global scale from Russia, from Russian and pro-Russian standpoint. And yes, this is my Rumble, dear friends, in case you are interested there. And yes, if you can watch my videos there, do it and subscribe too. Okay, and don't forget, dear friends, that evening time I have second updates on Rumble, live streams with their evening news from Moscow program that are packed with the news. So anyways, let's go through some news. And first of all, this report from RIA Novosti that Russian militaries liberated Miralyubovka settlement in a DPR. And let me show you on the map this area, by the way. So this is northern eastern flank of Pokrovsk, Mirnograd agglomeration, and this is Miralyubovka settlement, which is under full Russian control. This information is confirmed by Russian Defense Ministry, and it's not just this settlement, but right next to it on the northern eastern side is Malinovka settlement, which is also under Russian control according to number of reports, although Defense Ministry did not yet confirm this information. But many sources are reporting that Russian troops established control over the Malinovka, and also, according to some sources, Russian troops established control over the Bogatyr settlement, operational control, and clearing operation is underway, which is important development, obviously, at this stage of the special military operation. If Malinovka and Miralyubovka are located on the northern eastern flank of Pokrovsk Mirnograd agglomeration, then Bogatyr is located on the southern western side of it. And basically, initiative is in Russian hands all along the front line, of course, and Russian troops improving their positions on daily basis. A number of sources yesterday reported that Kyiv regime is concentrating relatively high number of its troops on the border with the Bryansk region, and some experts were suggesting in the Russian segment of internet that maybe Kyiv regime and its European backers, globalist backers, in their attempt to derail direct talks between Moscow and Kyiv, will try to escalate in the Bryansk direction while conducting attempt to break into this region. Possibility, theoretically speaking, but at least for now, there was no reports in Russian segment of internet about any attempts to break into Bryansk region. If any update on that, of course, I will share information about it during the next updates. But when it comes to attempts of globalist puppet regimes in Europe and their proxies in Kiev, I said in my previous updates that I think it is highly likely that they will try to derail this Russian initiative of direct talks between Moscow and Kiev in Istanbul, and to do so, they might conduct large-scale terrorist attacks on Russia, maybe even on Kiev-controlled territory. They may come up with some other ways to escalate, basically, and create a basis for Kiev regime to walk away. But we will find out. I guess Russian security services will take in account such possibility also, and will do whatever is necessary to minimize threats. But obviously, topic of Istanbul talks, direct talks between Moscow and Kiev, is number one at this point. Everyone is talking about it. Understandably so. Interest is quite high. And we have this report from TASS news agency, which is based on statements of US President Donald Trump, that head of US State Department Marco Rubio and other US envoys will fly to Istanbul for Ukraine meeting. And well, reports are that it's not just Marco Rubio, but also special envoys of Trump, Steve Witkoff and Kat Kellogg, will be in a US delegation also. Okay, this is supposed to be direct talks between Moscow and Kiev. That was an initiative of the Russian president, but clearly all this idea is turning into something different, and I don't really have a strong opinion yet. Is it for good or bad? This transformation of idea into something else. We will find out in just 24 to 48 hours. Also, dear friends, RIA Novosti is reporting that Marco Rubio had a phone conversation with the head of Zelensky's office, Andrei Yermak. I guess Rubio wanted to find out where Kiev regime stands in regards to this Istanbul talks, and most likely Rubio wanted to find out what kind of orders globalists and globalist puppet regimes in Europe, first of all London, did give Kiev regime. And who knows, maybe he knows better now. Whole position of globalists and their puppets. That might help US in some ways, but one should also keep in mind, dear friends, that Marco Rubio is a neocon, right? Marco Rubio and Kat Kellogg in the Trump's team, and many others are neocons, and sort of allies of globalists, and therefore, they might also be part of a problem. Questions are, who will lead the Russian delegation in Istanbul? And yesterday, a number of sources reported that Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov will lead the Russian delegation for talks in Istanbul on May 15. And the delegation will also include Russian presidential aider for foreign policy, Yuri Ushakov, heavyweights for sure. Kremlin did not yet officially confirm this information, neither foreign ministry made an official statement on this matter, but if Rubio is sent by Trump to Istanbul, then, and according to Rubio's schedule, by the way, he should be in Turkey anyways for that period. But if Rubio will attend these talks or will play some role in it, then it does make sense if from Russian side, Lavrov will lead the delegation. Yet again, this is not official information. Today we might find out officially who is going to lead the Russian delegation and who is going to be involved in these talks from a Russian side. And dear friends, I mentioned Kellogg, isn't it already? This neocon who is being put in the position of special envoy of US president in Ukraine as a distraction, because this personality is quite destructive. He clearly makes statements that are that did not go hand to hand with Trump's statements. This happens quite often. Well, yesterday on internet, videos were circulating about yet another statements of Witkoff with the threats towards Russia, with statements about deployment of NATO troops, also with the kind of demand that Putin should travel himself to Istanbul for whatever reasons, and of course Putin not gonna travel in Turkey. This is there is not even a slight chance, in my personal opinion, by the way. Only way Putin would consider to go to Turkey is if Trump will go there, and if administrations of Trump and Putin will organize face-to-face meeting between the two, but there is not enough time for that left, right, until 15th. So therefore, I think it is absolutely impossible that Putin will go in Turkey. And after all, for security reasons, Russian president should avoid such a travel, because one should keep in mind that Erdogan cannot be trusted, and Turkey itself is an ally of UK, right? Historical ally of UK, which says a lot, right? Also ally, at least partially, of US and NATO member state, and country that are run by people that cannot be trusted, like Erdogan, for example. But let's listen to Kellogg, what he had to say about this Istanbul talks first.
Be a superb meeting. I know President Zelensky is going to be there. I just talked to the Ukrainians, both Umarov, the defense minister, Zelensky, and also their chief of staff, and I want to confirm he's going to be there. He will be there on Thursday. We're hoping President Putin shows up as well, and then President Trump will be there. This could be an absolutely incredible meeting with him. You know, we've already got what we call the term sheet. The term sheet means these are the areas that we think they need to negotiate, they need to talk. We came through Paris and then in London a couple weeks ago, came up with them. And if we can get to this, we can get peace, I really believe, pretty fast if all three leaders sit down and talk. You know, President Trump, he has the art of the deal. He really knows how to make it work. And if he shows up, if Zelensky will be there and Putin shows up, I think we're a lot closer to a deal than many people think. And the first thing we'll go to is obviously a ceasefire, hopefully out of that, 30-day ceasefire, then build ongoing peace negotiations. But, you know, we're ready to go. We'll be there, and we'll see what happens.
You see, this moron, Cat Kellogg, once again, talking about this 30-day ceasefire. He said that first, 30-day ceasefire to be discussed and then negotiation to begin. Total nonsense, right? Total nonsense that Russia already said that is completely unacceptable for Russian side. So I wonder why this idiot is, talking about this crap time after time after time. What is wrong with him? And that's why I'm saying either this guy is a distraction, and that's for globalists and European puppet regimes of the globalists. And in that case, okay, I can find some reasoning why this person is still on the position of special envoy. But if he was not appointed especially to be a distraction, then in that case, Trump should get rid of him as soon as possible, because this person is humiliating Trump and his team, his administration, for sure. And I already said that in no way Russian president will go to Turkey right now. This is not the time, and not the place, for sure. But Russia will send delegation, have no doubts about it. And as I said to your friends, Kellogg also went to say once again that US is in discussion with a number of European states, UK, France, Germany, Poland, to send their troops on the banks of the Dnieper River. Not in western Ukraine, that would be understood in certain ways, but on the banks of the Dnieper River, right? so the west of the Dnieper will be controlled by NATO, which is absolutely unacceptable for Russian Federation, and Moscow was very clear on that. And the very day that NATO troops from whatever NATO country, being UK, France, Germany, Poland, or I don't know, Denmark, in whatever day they will arrive on Kiev-controlled territory, they will be designated as a combatant, legit target for Russian armed forces, and they will go back into their countries in a body box. Pure and simple. But this moron, Cat Kellogg, still talks about deployment of NATO troops, and I'm not sure if Trump is on the same page with him, right? Because a few days ago, Kellogg was opposing Russian initiative on direct talks and was in full support of this 30-day ceasefire. And the very same day, US President Donald Trump said that he is in favor of initiative of Russian president. So what's going on there? And when it comes to the statements about these British NATO troops in Ukraine, let's watch this short clip, by the way.
We're talking about NATO as well, the engagement of NATO. What does NATO look like? We were actually saying this may be a time, we hate to say this to Ukraine, but this may not happen in the near term, maybe something in the future, but not right now. When you're talking about the Brits, the French, as well as the Germans, and now actually the Poles have a force west of the Dnieper River, which means it's out of contact range, and then to the east you have a peacekeeping force, and what it would look like with a third party involved with that. So you can actually monitor a ceasefire. So we have this thing pretty well planned out. We looked at it. This term sheet is pretty extensive. We've actually passed that to the Ukrainians, to the Russians, to the members of NATO and the E3. So we're very, very comfortable where we're at, and what it should look like, a peace should look like. Obviously, with negotiations, it's not going to be perfect. It never is. But there'll be some give and take. We fully understand that.
Yeah, yet again, dear friends, Kellogg is not even hiding that all these talks about US blocking Ukraine's Ukraine joining NATO is just a bluff, right? And Kellogg says it openly, isn't it? Maybe this is not possible now, but sometime in the future, we will deal with it, right? All they want is to basically gain some time, right, for their proxy, and fool us. Try at least, right? But it will not work. That's the first point, right? And when it comes to deployment of NATO troops into Ukraine, I already said what is going to happen to them. They will go back to their countries in the body box. That's it. So European society should get ready for such possibility, because it seems like things are potentially moving exactly in that direction. But what is also interesting, dear friends, after the statements of Kellogg, one of high-ranking officials in Poland came out and said that Warsaw is not considering sending its troops nowhere, and definitely not in Ukraine. So these people are unable to even communicate between each other, to have some similar stance, similar positions. And they are quite often contradicting each other, actually. So Polish Minister of National Defense, Władysław Kosiniak-Kamyz, denied Cat Kellogg's words about the intention to send troops to Ukraine. So which one is that? Is Kellogg is lying, or is Kosiniak-Kamyz is lying, or both? Collective West is a big mess nowadays, isn't it? You cannot take no word from Collective West seriously, and you can definitely never trust elites, so-called elites of the Collective West countries. It's just humanly impossible, right? And just in case, official representative of Russian president, press spokesman of the Russian president, Dmitry Peskov, once again highlighted Russia's critical attitude towards a number of European states, hostile states, let's say, which indicates also that the Russian position has not changed on the topic of deployment of NATO troops, although in this particular information, Peskov addressed the request of number of European leaders to be a part of negotiations on on Ukrainian matters, and Kremlin said no. There is no place for Europe on negotiation table. Understandably so. So Europe has taken an ambiguous position on Kiev's side, and in the Kremlin's opinion is not capable of acting as an impartial participant in possible negotiations to resolve the conflict. Russian presidential press spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that Europe fully supports Kiev and therefore cannot claim a balanced role in any negotiations to resolve the situation in Ukraine. So Moscow's position is quite clear. Russia is not interested in Europe's participation in talks, and Russia is not really interested in Europe's position at all, really. And I support this approach. We should just forget about the existence of that part of the world and just carry on with our lives, right? And one may argue that US was also involved and still involved in this proxy war against Russia and play a huge role, which is true, obviously. But current administration, at least on the level of statements, is demonstrating willing to pull out country from this proxy war, right? And Russian president clearly created the off-ramp for US administration to pull out their country from this bloody mess that globalists created. And hopefully Trump and his inner circle will grab this opportunity and use it to walk away and save the face, because there are going to be no other opportunities, I think, to walk away without being completely humiliated. So either US will use this opportunity now as an off-ramp, because obviously these talks in Istanbul not going to have no results, by the way, no concrete results. So that would be definitely can be seen as an opportunity for the US to just walk away and save face, because they're not going to get another chance. And they need to walk away. US needs to walk away. I'm 100% convinced in that. And Washington needs to have a de-escalation with Moscow, and Washington needs to agree that they and the globalists and collective West in general lost this proxy war against Russia. Washington has to agree on the concessions. These don't have to be public, but Washington has to agree on the concessions to make sure that Russian government, Moscow, will not seek revenge, at least on the state level. And this is very, very important for US. And dear friends, as an example how important it is, as just one example, I can tell you that if and when US, on behalf of Israel, will get engaged in a war with Iran, you think Iranian missiles gonna use flight path targeting data, satellite intelligence, navigation system from which country? And you think US bases all around the Middle East, US warships in the Red Sea, in the Mediterranean, in nothing to be said about Persian Gulf, Arabian Sea or Indian Ocean gonna be sunk with missiles that use navigation and their intelligence from which country? And US assets, all sorts of assets in the Middle East and elsewhere are gonna be wiped out by Iranian missiles that were using satellite navigation, intelligence, targeting data from which country? We know the answer, isn't it? So that's why, and this is just one example, dear friends, why it is extremely important for US to have a deal with Moscow. And this deal just partially can be, open for public. Rest, especially in terms of concessions that US would have to agree due to harm that was done to Russia as a result of US engagement in this proxy war. I mean, that part of agreement can be, not disclosed. But US definitely needs agreement with Moscow, 100%. But meanwhile, by the way, meanwhile, Europe is in whole different universe. European so-called elites, and for example, Macron once again issued the ultimatum and the threats towards Russia that EU and US could impose new sanctions against Russia and do this and that. And I'm sharing this information just to highlight that we just simply don't care. We just simply don't care what Western so-called elites have to say, and we definitely don't care about sanctions. And if we did not demonstrate this for last 3 years, then I don't know what would or who would. We simply don't care, and someone should tell these morons that are formally in charge of European states that they should stop talking about sanctions because they are laughable. It's already 30,000 plus sanctions on Russia, or some say even 40,000, right? There's already a lot of sanctions, and they're not gonna do nothing that will break Russian economy or will of Russian society to destroy, completely destroy and eliminate enemies. It is what it is. TASS news agency is reporting that very same EU seems like are going to impose some restrictions on Ukraine also. So EU prepares to raise duties on agricultural products from Ukraine from June 6, which is done to protect local farmers, I guess, and they will receive this news with applause. But when it comes to Kyiv regime, they probably would not like this information very much. But anyways, just to know. RT is also reporting that Berlin decided to no longer discuss missile deliveries to Kyiv in public. So Germany wants to maintain a low profile on future armed deliveries to Ukraine and has refused to publicly discuss the potential delivery of Taurus cruise missiles to Kyiv. Okay, they may not talk about it, but we all know that Merz, even before elected as a chancellor of Germany, stated a number of times that he is in full support of transfer of these long-range cruise missiles. And I don't think his stance has been changed since that. So Russian military intelligence, Russian security services will of course closely monitor situation in regards to these weapon systems and will do whatever is necessary to minimize threats to Russia and Russian public. RIA Novosti is also reporting that US general assesses a probability of direct conflict with Russia. So the head of US Northern Command, General Grigory Gulot, told the US Congress that there remain likely path for the conflict in Ukraine to escalate to a direct confrontation between United States and Russia. There remain several plausible paths by which the conflict in Ukraine could escalate into a direct military conflict with the United States and Russia, Geliot said at the congressional hearing. According to him, Russia, Iran, and China avoid direct armored conflict with Washington. You know what? Is Washington not avoid direct military conflict with Russia or China? They are planning war with Iran, and they will go ahead with that. And US gonna regret this decision. But when it comes to Russia and China, is US not trying to avoid direct conflict with Russia and China? Of course they do. Because I don't think US political class, US elites are suicidal because they're gonna die if they will ever dare to go openly on a war with Russia or China, by the way. So what this nonsense is about? But this is US, isn't it? This US public figures, even generals, by the way, that should be a little more serious. Love to play this cowboy, love to have this cowboy attitude or gangster attitude. That, you know what, we are so tough. China and Russia avoid direct confrontation with us. Freaking animals, man. Unbelievable. Is US not trying to avoid direct conflict with Russia? Does US wants to be obliterated, literally, and turned to in radioactive dust? Anyways, I wonder how US still exists, by the way, when they have such morons in leadership, in military leadership, political leadership. How this country still exists, man? This is just, I don't know. It does make no sense no more, man. And most likely US is going down, by the way, due to this this reality that they just have complete morons in the leadership, and this cannot change in instant. And I don't think US has much time to improve anything, really. But anyways, so according to this general, Russia, Iran, and China avoiding direct armed conflict with Washington, while their perception of Western decline allegedly contributes to a growing willingness to challenge the United States on the world stage and increases the risks of miscalculation in a crisis situation. You know what? There is nothing left from US to challenge, for God's sake, on the world stage. Everybody hates US. No one respects US. US is nothing, right? Literally nothing. Just remnants of the power that it had some 30, 40 years ago, and just give it another 20, 30 years, and we will see that US would not be, if things continue this way as it is right now in United States, then give it another 20, 30 years, and US would not be even a pawn on a geopolitical desk, as Europe is not going to be. And US and Europe would not be not just a pawn, but they would not be even a dust on that chessboard. They will just be nothing. Nothingness. That's their destiny of US and Europe. If they continue to behave this irrationally, by the way. It is what it is. Although US, I said many times before that US potentially has chances and resources to change the things, right? If somehow US citizens will manage to wake up, and if they will support people to take governmental positions or decision-making positions that are really adequate. But will US public wake up? That's a whole different story. Europe is doomed, by the way. I mean, Europe just has no chances whatsoever. Only countries in Europe that will be in more or less good position in 20, 30, 40 years is countries that will have good relationships with Russia. The rest is doomed. It is what it is. But attitude of this general is quite something, isn't it? That he thinks that US is still top dog, while it is not, man. It is not. Take a look at the special military operation. Vast majority of NATO countries, by the way, spend hundreds of billions of dollars, sacrifice millions of citizens of Ukraine while using them as their cannon fodder, their fight force. And what they did achieve? Did they manage to defeat Russia? All these NATO member states, with the exception of one, by the way, Hungary, as far as I understand, was never supporting this. But rest was supporting. Nowadays, Slovakia is not supporting, but during the previous government, even Slovakia was in full support, and previous government of Slovakia quite effectively demilitarized that country. So much weapons were sent to Kiev regime. And what they achieved, what NATO achieved, by the way, including US, they've been humiliated on the world stage. That's what they managed to achieve in strategical terms. But unfortunately, due to this proxy war that was provoked by the West, globalists, Western ruling class, hundreds of thousands of people died. And according to Colonel Douglas MacGregor, Kiev regime lost actually more than 1 million of its troops. Troops, by the way, more than 1 million. let's continue. Zglyad newspaper is reporting that, well, Russian president, if you are interested, dear friends, how Russian army is doing, then yesterday, during one of the meetings, Russian president highlighted that about 50,000 citizens of the Russian Federation on monthly basis are joining armed forces, 50 to 60,000, more than 1,000 every single day, obviously about 1,500 every single day. And this is happening while on Kyiv controlled territory. We all know how people being basically kidnapped on the streets, and in many cases from their own homes, by the way, to be then being forcefully mobilized and thrown into trenches. So this is a statement from Russian president. So Russian President Vladimir Putin has reported a significant increase in the number of volunteers joining the military, emphasizing their independent decision to serve. Putin noted that at least 50,000 volunteers came to service in the Russian army every month. At the meeting with the leadership of Delovaya Rossiya, the head of the state emphasized that these people make their decision voluntarily, including employees of their enterprises that are part of the organization. Putin compared this situation to their mobilization in Ukraine, noting that the Kiev authorities managed to forcibly recruit about 30,000 people a month into the armed forces. Their president added, they are now catching people, and here, they're in Ukraine are catching people on the streets, which is true, by the way. They're forcefully mobilizing them. And here in Russia, 50-60,000 a month came themselves, including from your work collectives, said Russian president. And well, numbers, talk volume, isn't it, in this particular case? We have volunteers, tens of thousands of volunteers that are joining army, and in Ukraine, tens of thousands of people being basically dragged from the streets, from their families, from their workplaces, directly into trenches, by the way. In many cases, these forcibly mobilized people don't even have 2 weeks training. Just a day or two somewhere, and that's it. They've been thrown into trenches. That's it. TASS news agency, meanwhile, is reporting that Ukrainian armed forces lost about more than 1,300 actually servicemen in a special military operation in previous 24 hours. This was reported yesterday, by the way. So this data is for previous 24 hour, and well, every single day these numbers are approximately like that. Sometimes numbers are much higher, 2,000, 2,500, but in this particular case, Kyiv regime lost more than 1,300 military personnel, killed and wounded, by the way. This is not just killed, but this is killed and wounded. And this is just daily stuff on the battlefield. Kyiv regime's losses are just tremendous. And if you were interested, by the way, and I know some members of our community at least were interested in this topic for sure, because I was seeing their questions about General Armageddon. Yesterday's Zglyad newspaper reported about Surovikin and Surovikin's whereabouts, and let's read this news. In the footage published by the embassy, Russian embassy in Algeria, by the way, Army General Surovikin took part in ceremony to lay the flowers to grave of Soviet soldier in Algeria. Photos from the ceremony dedicated to Victory Day were published on the Telegram channel of the Russian embassy in Algeria. Kommersant newspaper writes about it. In the picture, the former commander of the joint group of forces in the zone of special military operation, General of Army General Sergei Surovikin, is captured in a company of Ambassador Alexei Solomatin, military attaché Vladimir Tsukhanov, and the employees of the diplomatic mission as they go to lay flowers at the grave of Soviet soldier Ostapchenko. Diplomatic mission's statement did not mention Surovikin directly, but was identified by his position as a head of group of Russian military specialists in Algeria. So official position of Russian General Surovikin, world famous general, I will say, is head of group of Russian military specialists in Algeria, and I think he might be involved in Russian support to number of other countries in Africa also where Russian militaries are presented. But his official title seems like is that he's a head of group of Russian military specialists in Algeria. And I remind you, dear friends, that Algeria most likely will be first country which will buy Russian 5th gen Su-57 fighter jets. And Algeria is purchasing quite a lot of Russian weapons. So interesting, isn't it? Interesting. Meanwhile, Trump, who was in Saudi Arabia yesterday, made quite a number of statements. According to some reports, Saudi leadership decided to invest in US some $600 billion, which is going to be, one of their highlight points of this visit, I guess, of Trump in the Gulf states. But during his presence in Saudi Arabia, and he would then travel to United Arab Emirates and then to Qatar, I believe. But anyways, while he was in Saudi Arabia, he stated that he will remove sanctions on Syria. Let's listen to his statement, dear friends, on this matter.
I will be ordering the cessation of sanctions against Syria in order to give them a chance at greatness.
He loves this, isn't it? This freaking show, man. Ay, blin. US is removing sanctions on Syria when this country is controlled by terrorists. Before, Syria was controlled by secular government, autocratian or whatever, but secular government. US and their collectivist countries were destroying Syria with sanctions, because this country was not in a position to withstand such pressure. And now when this pro-Turkish or Turkish-controlled proxy terrorist regime is in power in Damascus, they are lifting sanctions. This said it all, isn't it? I mean, this just said it all, right? Where collective West stands and where the rest of the world is. It's just, there is clear divide, right? There is no morality on side of West, by the way, left. There is no dignity on side of West, left. No humanity side of West. I'm talking about Western elites, political class, obviously. I'm not talking about ordinary people, but decision makers are these so-called elites, isn't it? They are not asking people about their decisions. I don't think US public was asked about this decision. Should US lift sanctions on terrorists? But this information is clearly yet another favor that US is doing for Turkey, isn't it? Because Damascus is Syria now controlled by Turkish proxy regime. And I did and just a couple of days ago, I reported, yesterday or day before, I reported that surprisingly, Kurdish Workers' Party, PKK, also made decision to lay down arms and no longer engaged in a military struggle against Turkey. Some other decisions were made by the Western countries in favor of, including by US, in favor of Ankara, and the question is why? What is going on? And my understanding of the situation is, by the way, and I spoke about it before, that US and number of other countries basically are buying out Erdogan's regime, because they want Turkey to either stay neutral or even participate in military hostilities against Iran. And Turkey is an important country, by the way, because first of all, Turkey is bordering Iran. And secondly, Turkey has quite close ties with Azerbaijan. And Azerbaijan is located on Caspian Sea, by the way. And if you take a look at the map, when US, Israel, and I'm not talking about if, by the way, I am saying when US, Israel, and a number of their allies will attack Iran, Caspian Sea is going to be most likely major lifeline for Iran, right? And to distract this lifeline, the US is now trying to bribe basically Erdogan's regime with all sorts of favors, so that Turkey will use its leverage over the Baku, so that Azerbaijan will try to distract potential, navigation basically in the Caspian Sea, when convoys of vessels will travel from Russia to Iran in a non-stop, constantly, right? In non-stop regime. And by the way, because this lifeline goes from Russia to Iran, this is yet another reason. This is yet another, also from Kazakhstan, by the way. One should keep in mind that Kazakhstan is also can provide Iran potentially with some assistance if Turkey, if China has enough leverage over the Kazakhstan. But we should keep in mind that Kazakhstan is a Turkic-speaking country. Turkey has a significant influence over the Astana also. But Russia is a whole different story. And one of the reasons why, in my opinion, Washington is rushing to kind of achieve some agreement with Moscow, to reach some agreement with Moscow, is to receive guarantees that Russia will not seek revenge against US on a state level at least. And in that case, US probably would hope that Russia will not provide Iran with the military and the intelligence assistance during the war that US is going to start against Iran. It seems absolutely inevitable, by the way, for many reasons. Hopefully Russia will support Iran with whatever is necessary, because yet again, this Caspian Sea is going to be truly a lifeline for Iran, because take a look at the map, dear friends. Persian Gulf, in case of war, Persian Gulf and the Hormuz Strait will be shut down, obviously. Indian Ocean will be, Arabian Sea, Indian Ocean will be shut down for Iran, and the Caspian Sea is going to be lifeline, 100%. So you see how entangled all these geopolitical developments are, isn't it? And it is not some random stuff that Trump is visiting now Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar. He wants to make sure that these countries will also stay on board with US during this attack on Iran, and will either support or stay neutral. That's what is happening. And in this regard, there was a media reports, isn't it, that Trump might recognize independence of Palestine, state of Palestine. This did not happen yet, at least for now. 9:30 in Moscow on 14th of May, but we might see such a statement from Trump today, maybe tomorrow. It's still a possibility, and that recognition of potential recognition of Palestine would be also part of this bigger geopolitical game that US is engaged right now to create her anti-Iranian coalition and to give something to brag about Arab countries or countries in the Middle East, so that their position would not be shaken by public disappointment or public outrage when US and Israel will attack Iran. And they're gonna be public outrage despite their fact that Iran, by the way, is mostly Shiite Muslim country, and other countries in the Middle East are mostly Sunni Muslim countries. Only other country that is a Shiite, predominantly Shiite, is Azerbaijan, as far as I know. Azerbaijan is also a mostly Shiite country, but Turkic speaking. So therefore, Azerbaijan has much closer ties with Turkey than with Iran, despite the fact that there is a huge Iranian diaspora, Azerbaijani diaspora in Iran, and in Iranian leadership there is many ethnic Azerbaijanis, but it did not help to build a strategical partnership between Tehran and Baku. Turkey did manage to basically, take over the Azerbaijan. Anyways, dear friends, you see how connected all these developments are, isn't it? Let's continue with some more news. And meanwhile, Netanyahu is escalating and stating that a large-scale offensive from Gaza is inevitable. And he also went to say that in no circumstances Israel will stop its military operation in Gaza. And I think it's not just about Gaza now, by the way. Netanyahu's regime is escalating on a regular basis and in all directions, because they are engaged in the preparations of the ground to attack Iran. Eventually, as always, they're gonna blame for everything Iran, right? And that's what is going on. But when it comes to Palestine, unfortunately, it seems like my prediction from the beginning of Israeli operation in Gaza was correct when I said that Israel most likely will implement her Karabakh scenario in the Gaza Strip, which means to force locals out of the region. And seems like that's exactly what's going to happen. On the first stage, Israel will force locals out of Gaza Strip, then from the West Bank, and then Israel might even take on southern Lebanon for permanent occupation and to force locals out of the region. And Syria, significant parts of Syria already been occupied by Israel for decades, by the way, and more territories actually. And Israeli forces are now occupying more and more land, not just Golan Heights, but they went far beyond that. Also, RIA Novosti is reporting that there was clashes again in Tripoli, in Libya. So local armed formations are engaged in hostilities for second night. They were fighting each other, and even though this internationally recognized government of Libya, that is based in Tripoli, stated that situation has calmed down and government forces are in control, in reality, a lot of videos were published on internet last night, by the way, and this morning about continuous clashes of different factions of this very same government, right? Factions, armed formations that are controlled by different factions in the government. So it's a sort of internal civil war in Tripoli now, right? And Benghazi, and as you know, dear friends, Libya is divided on several parts, and biggest parts are controlled by Tripoli government on the west and Benghazi government on the east, right? And probably Benghazi will watch for time being, and if situation continues to escalate in Tripoli, at some point Benghazi forces might actually take on a military operation to establish control over the Tripoli. Once again, a couple of years ago, Benghazi forces that were commanded by Haftar already were on our outskirts of Tripoli, but then Turkey get involved big time on behalf of Tripoli, and Haftar's forces retreated. Some agreement was reached basically, but now if situation deteriorates in Tripoli, and this internal conflict will continue. Obviously, some armored formations will seek assistance from Haftar, to maintain their relevance, and this assistance might come from Benghazi. Anyways, let's see. Let's monitor the situation in that area. Also, RT is also reporting, dear friends, that Trump issues nuclear deal threat to Iran. Just a couple of days ago, Trump was threatening Iran with a military action again, while writing on his Truth Social that military option is back on the table. And now U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened to reduce Iran's oil exports to zero if ongoing talks in Oman fail. And by the way, when it comes to these talks between U.S. and Iran, I believe U.S. is not a honest player, and they are just messing around. They are creating basement. They are laying ground to say after these talks will fail that they try everything. They try diplomatic means, and it did not work. And now they're gonna go on a military option. Go for military option. That's what is happening, because U.S. demands. Even if Iran will agree on all U.S. demands, by the way, today, tomorrow U.S. will come up with some more. Until the point when Iran will say, no, enough is enough. We cannot agree on that, right? That's what is going on. That's why I'm quite sure U.S. is not honest player in these negotiations that are mediated by Oman. Fourth round was taking place just a couple of days ago, and fifth round should be on the way. But as I said, this is just games on part of Washington. U.S. is not serious about de-escalating with Iran. I'm 100% convinced. And I was very surprised, by the way, when during the recent interview with Judge Napolitano, Professor Jeffrey Sachs said that he believes Trump and his team really wants to pull out U.S., really wants to, pull out U.S. from confrontational ladder and to, distance U.S. from Netanyahu and distance U.S. from risks of war with Iran and that kind of stuff. And I was quite surprised. I mean, did he really believe in this? I mean, how? Take a look at Trump's administration, by the way. Literally everyone in that administration is a Zionist. Literally everyone, by the way, with no exceptions. Everyone is a Zionist. And you are telling me that Trump is pulling out U.S. from Zionist grip? I mean, it does make no sense. This statement, I was surprised, by the way. Usually, I find there are statements of Sachs and his reading of a big picture quite interesting. But a few days ago, I was a bit surprised to maybe he wants to be optimistic. I don't know. He is a U.S. citizen, isn't it? I believe, and he wants some good for his country. And probably this was a wishful thinking of on his part that Trump's administration will try to de-escalate with with Iran and with everybody, and will not play on behalf of Israel. But this is not the case, by the way. It's just wishful thinking. Anyways, dear friends, let's end this update on this particular news that Putin sets conditions for return of Western firms. Russia is ready to welcome back some of the Western companies that left its market after the escalation of the Ukrainian conflict, as long as it serves Moscow's economic interests. President Vladimir Putin has stated, speaking during the meeting with Russian business leaders on Tuesday, Putin said that we need to look at how these companies have behaved. Those who have been rude, insulted us, should be banned the right to re-enter the Russian market, he said, and I agree 100%, by the way. I wouldn't let any of those companies back on Russian markets, literally any of them. If they betray customers' trust, then they should not be allowed to be back on Russian market. But especially ones that were rude, by the way, especially ones that were making political statements and were financing and still continue to finance this Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky. So at least Putin is saying that, well, companies that were rude will be banned to re-enter Russian market, commenting on the suggestion that a simple apology from other firms would be sufficient. The Russian president replied, well, no, this is clearly not enough. He explained that that showed Western business executives would readily offer apologies if they were interested in returning to the Russian market. This is not enough. We absolutely must consider all these issues from a pragmatic viewpoint, Putin said. It is on our best interest that some company or another comes to our market, then we need to let it in. I'll put it simply. If not, we need to find 1,000 reasons why it should not be here. He clarified, adding that the vast majority of such reasons would be in line with the World Trade Organization guidelines. Okay, basically, in general, Putin is not against these companies to come back on Russian markets, but companies that were engaged in some anti-Russian activity probably will get no second chances. At least something. I would never allow any of them to come back on Russian market, but yet again, it's not up to me, isn't it? So this is it. And by the way, on regular basis, Russian media is publishing news about more and more these Western companies that are registering their trademarks and preparing ground to come back on Russian markets. Many of them did not even sold their properties here in Russia, their stores and so on, and some work, when I'm walking on the streets, by the way, in Moscow, I can see that in those stores some movement is happening, so they are preparing to reopen, right? So Putin definitely has reason why he was talking about this topic of Western companies coming back. They are lining up, by the way, and waiting some green light, probably from Washington. I don't know. And okay, relatively long update, dear friends. But as I said, I will cut this video now. I will publish it in full, and then I will, for members of our community that have no time to watch, for example, 1 hour long video, I will make, 3-4 parts and publish like that. It will help, I hope. I don't know, man, what else can I do? So, okay, thank you very much, dear friends, for your attention. Hopefully you will find this video informative and useful, and if so, please click that like button and leave some commentary. It really might help more likes and comments. If you notice on YouTube, algorithm is crashing my videos for quite a while, always, by the way, but latest several weeks situation is getting, really out of control. I will say this algorithm is going crazy on YouTube. At least view numbers are increasing on Rumble, which is good. So yes, if you can, please click that like button, leave some commentary, share video with your friends, or information about existence of my channel. And if you like my work, you can support if you want, or with donation through PayPal or Boosty platforms, or you can subscribe to my Patreon page where I have extra content on a regular basis. All the links are on this video in description box and in the pinned comment, including crypto address, just in case. Have a wonderful day, and dear friends, before I go, let me remind you that this evening at 10 o'clock I will have an evening news update during the live stream on Rumble. I hope you will find the time to join. So yes, this is it for now. Have a wonderful day and take care.